sharp scent of pine and wet soil filled my lungs as they dragged me through the woods, my bare feet scraping against roots and jagged stones. Autumn had turned the forest into a burning sea of gold and rust, but I couldn't see the beauty. Only the rough hands shoving me onward. Behind us, the pack murmured, with sick excitement, whispering about the human gift being delivered to Blackstone's territory. But I wasn't human, not fully. My tangled blonde hair clung to my face as I stumbled, the silver chains biting into my wrists like fire. Silver, the one thing that could strip a wolf of its power, and to someone like me, a half-breed, it burned deeper. Back in Silver Creek, I had been the pack's defect. Too weak to shift, too human to matter, too wolf to blend among people. Keep moving, snarled Roran Creed, my old Alpha's son and the head of this escort. His voice dripped with disdain as his fingers dug into my shoulder. You should be grateful, Seren. Seren. Most unwanted females get tossed into the wild. At least this way you'll serve a purpose. Purpose. The word felt hollow in my chest. My purpose was to be a peace offering, one broken soul for a temporary truce between Silver Creek and the ruthless Blackstone pack. Generations of blood had poisoned the land between them, and somehow my worthless life was supposed to buy them silence. When the world bares its teeth, you show it your soul instead, my mother's voice whispered in memory. She'd said that the night she gave me the small wooden charm that hung from my neck, the lunalite sigil. Its familiar weight was the only comfort left before she died. She'd told me that true strength didn't come from claws or fangs, but from a heart that refused to shatter. My fingers brushed the charm, now stealing courage from the warmth of its wood. Ahead, the trees broke into a vast clearing, where walls of dark stone rose from the earth like the spine of an ancient beast. Torches flared along the perimeter, throwing restless shadows against the towering gates of a Blackstone. Even from here, I could feel the power pulsing beyond those walls, an ocean of werewolves, hundreds of them, their energy thickening the air. Roran yanked me to a stop. Remember your place, he hissed. You're nothing to them. Nothing to anyone. Maybe you'll scrub their floors if you're lucky. If not... His smirk turned vicious. I hear the Blackstone Alpha has quite an appetite. The tone in his voice made my stomach turn. Still, I lifted my chin and met his eyes. A small rebellion that earned me a sharp backhand. Still pretending you've got pride, he sneered. That's always been your problem, Seren. You never learned where you belong. The gates groaned open, and figures emerged from the dark mass of shapes, the air thick with dominance. Even with my dulled senses, their strength made my knees weak. These were pure-blood alphas and betas, their eyes glinting with eerie light. This is it, one of them asked, stepping into the firelight. His shadow swallowed Roran whole. This is your offering. Roran straightened instantly, all arrogance gone. She's stronger than she looks, half-breed, but trained. She'll be useful. The word made bile rise in my throat. I kept my gaze down, not out of submission, but to hide the fury burning inside. 23 years of being less than nothing, and now I was being handed off like currency. The Alpha King will decide her worth, one of the wolves said flatly. 2 guards, Tor and Eric, from their scent stepped beside me. Silver Creek's debt is acknowledged. You may go. Just like that, I was transferred. Property exchanged under torchlight. Roran didn't even glance back as he led his men into the dark woods. The Blackstone warriors guided me through the gates into a courtyard bathed in orange flame. The place was a fortress, stone buildings, pressed against jagged cliffs, tunnels, carved deep into the mountain. Warriors paced the walls like silent predators. This way, grunted one of my escorts, steering me toward the largest structure at the compound's heart. Dozens of eyes followed me, some cold, some curious, a few pitying. Whispers slithered through the crowd. Half-breed. Can't even shift. Wonder what the king wants with her. I kept walking, clutching the lunalite sigil tight. Whatever waited ahead, I'd face it standing tall. The main hall loomed before me, heavy with the scent of pine smoke and ancient wood. Thick beams crossed the ceiling, and in the center a great circular fire roared its light, painting everything in flickering gold and shadow. The fire pit roared at the center of the great hall, its flames washing the stone walls in gold and shadow. Animal pelts hung like trophies. Deer, bears, wolves, and among them I saw with a cold shiver the ceremonial hides of those who had challenged the Blackstone throne and failed. At the far end stood a raised platform of raw stone crowned by a throne made of antlers, massive, tangled, ancient. The room pulsed with power, heavy and timeless. "Wait here," one of the guards barked, shoving me toward the fire. "And don't even think about running. There's nowhere for you to go." As if I had anywhere left to run. Silver Creek had thrown me away, and the human world would never take something like me, a creature stranded between two worlds. I stood there, my wrists still bound in silver, the fire's warmth doing little to chase away the dread crawling through my bones. Minutes stretched, each one slower than the last. My legs trembled, but I refused to sit. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. Then the doors at the end of the hall burst open. Silence swept through the chamber. Even the flames seemed to bow. He entered like the night itself, Kyle Draven, the Alpha King. His movements were fluid and dangerous, every stride radiating dominance. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his skin kissed by sun and scarred by war. Dark hair brushed back from a face too sharp to be merciful, all chiseled strength and restraint. But his eyes, those eyes stopped the air in my lungs. Amber burning gold under the firelight, pupils slit like a predator's. Every wolf in the hall lowered their gaze instinctively as he passed, power rolling off him like a storm. He didn't look at them. His focus was fixed entirely on me. Every step he took made the air heavier until he stopped just a few feet away, inhaling softly, as if catching a scent he didn't expect. For a fleeting second, his expression shifted something between confusion and disbelief. Then it was gone. So he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the floor. "This is Silver Creek's peace offering." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "Apparently so." A brow lifted. No one spoke to an Alpha King that way. Not without permission. Not without fear. He began circling me like a hunter sizing up prey. His gaze felt tangible, measuring, searching, dissecting. I kept my head, high spine straight, though exhaustion clawed at me. "Your name," he demanded, stopping before me again. "Seren Vale." "Seren," he repeated, tasting it like it was unfamiliar on his tongue. "And you know why you're here. I'm a peace offering," I said bitterly. A token to keep Silver Creek from bleeding any more territory. Something like a smirk tugged at his mouth, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Is that what they told you?" Before I could answer, his hand shot out fast as lightning. His fingers caught my chin, forcing my gaze upward. Heat radiated from him, wild alive. Up close I saw flecks of green and gold glinting in his amber eyes. "Half-breed," he murmured, not as an insult, but as if stating a mystery. "But there's something else." Whatever he saw there made his jaw tighten. He dropped his hand abruptly and turned to the guards. "Take her to the eastern quarters, the room at the end of the hall. Post guards at every door and window." The guards froze, trading wary glances. One hesitated. "But my king, that wing is reserved for—" Did I stutter? Kyle's voice turned to steel, quiet but lethal. The guard's head bowed instantly. "No, my king!" They moved to lead me out, but his voice stopped them again. "Remove those chains." A key turned, and the silver fell away with a sharp clink. The relief was immediate, a rush of air on raw, blistered skin. I couldn't stop the small gasp that escaped me. Kyle's gaze darkened as he saw the burns circling my wrists. For a brief heartbeat, something fierce, almost protective, flashed across his face. "See that her wounds are treated," he ordered quietly. "And bring her food, proper food, from my table." He turned and walked away, Before anyone could respond, the crowd parting in silence behind him. As the guards led me down the hall, I tried to understand what had just happened. Why would the ruthless Alpha King of Blackstone care about my comfort or my pain? Halfway to the door, a strange prickle ran down my spine. Someone was watching. I turned, and there he was. Kyle stood half hidden in the shadows by a side archway, his gaze locked on me, unreadable. For a moment, something electric passed between us, a recognition, an unspoken pull. Then he vanished into the darkness, as though he'd never been there at all. That night, lying in a soft bed, far removed from the dirt floors of Silver Creek, I clutched the lunalite sigil to my chest and whispered into the dark. "What do you want from me, Cale Draven?" I had been sold off, expecting chains, servitude, maybe even death. Instead, I found myself in the care of Kyle Draven, the most feared alpha across the frontier. Treated not like property, but as something else. I couldn't name it. All I knew was that the moment those golden eyes locked with mine, something ancient and dangerous awoke between us, and it terrified me as much as it thrilled me. Dawn spilled through the narrow window, painting streaks of gold across stone walls I didn't recognize. For a heartbeat, I lay there, disoriented by the softness beneath me, the warmth of real blankets, the silence of safety. Then it hit me. This wasn't Silver Creek. This was Blackstone, the enemy stronghold. I was an offering traded like cattle. Yet my reality didn't match the stories. The chamber was modest but refined, a sturdy bed, a wash basin, and clean linens, folded neatly at its foot. The clothes left for me were simple yet fine wool, and linen soft against my skin. Nothing like the worn scraps I'd grown up with. My wrists still bore angry red burns from the silver. The pain had dulled overnight, soothed by a salve that smelled of forest moss and sage. The healer Seren, she'd called herself, had treated me silently, though her curious gaze kept drifting to my face as if trying to place me. A gentle knock broke my thoughts. The door creaked open, and a young woman stepped in, carrying a tray. The smell hit first. Warm bread, ripe fruit, roasted meat. My stomach betrayed me with an audible growl. "The Alpha King requests your presence in the council chamber once you've eaten and dressed," she said, setting the tray on a small table by the window. Her voice was calm, but her eyes studied me carefully, like I was a puzzle she wasn't sure she wanted to solve. "I'm Naira," she added. "I've been assigned to assist you." "Assist me," I echoed, tearing off a piece of bread. "Or watch me." Her lips twitched. "Both, if I'm being honest. You've caused quite a stir." I frowned. "I don't understand why. I'm no one." Naira tilted her head. "The Alpha King doesn't move personally for no one. He doesn't place offerings in the Eastern Wing either." She hesitated. "And he certainly doesn't what I pressed." Her gaze darted away. "It's not my place," she murmured, opening a chest and revealing a wash basin and folded towel. "You should get ready. It's unwise to keep him waiting." As I cleaned up, my thoughts spiraled. Why had Cale Draven intervened? What did he want from me? The stories said he'd torn through challengers bare-handed, that he could shift faster than any living wolf, that he ruled Blackstone with iron precision. The clothes fit as if tailored leggings, tunic and soft leather boots. As I fastened the lunalite sigil around my neck, Nira's eyes followed the movement. "That's beautiful," she said softly. "Old magic, if I'm not mistaken." "It belonged to my mother," I said, fingers brushing the carved wolf. "Was she from Silver Creek Numb?" The word came out sharper than intended. My mother's past wasn't something I talked about. She had arrived pregnant and alone, an outsider who never explained where she came from. When she died, she took her secrets with her. Sensing the weight in my voice, Naira let the silence settle. Then she gestured toward the hall. "Come. I'll take you to the council chamber." The corridors of Blackstone were carved from the mountain itself, solid, purposeful. As daylight poured in, through high windows, I caught glimpses of the world outside. Stone towers, watch posts, sparring grounds where warriors trained under the rising sun. Everything was precise, disciplined. Nothing like the chaos of Silver Creek. Wolves passed us along the way, each moving with awareness of rank. Subtle bows, lowered gazes, the quiet hum of a hierarchy that ran as deep as bloodlines. The council chamber shared its walls with the great hall, though this entrance was quieter guarded. 2 warriors, Tor and Eric, I remembered their sense, stood at attention. The Alpha King's guest, Naira announced. Her wording wasn't lost on me. Guest. Not servant. Not property. And that one word was somehow more terrifying than all the rest. Not prisoner. Not offering. Guest. The word echoed in my mind, strange and disorienting. The guards looked as startled by it as I felt, stepping aside without a word. Naira gave me a quick, reassuring nod. Good luck, she whispered. Then the door closed behind me, and I was alone facing whatever came next. The council chamber was smaller than the great hall, but carried the same quiet gravity. A long table of dark wood filled the room's center, its surface carved with strange runes and claw-like marks that looked more ritual than decorative. Maps littered the far wall, marked with red ink and burn scars. A rack of weapons blades, axes. Even relics that looked centuries old lined another. The fire in the stone hearth flickered steadily, its warmth unable to melt the weight in the air. Kyle Draven stood near the maps, his back to me. He wore no crown, no armor, just a dark shirt rolled to his forearms, but his power filled the space like thunder before a storm. You slept well, he asked without turning. His voice was low, resonant, carrying an effortless authority that made my pulse quicken. Well enough, I replied, sharper than I intended. Better than anyone sold like cattle probably should. He turned then. Those amber eyes met mine, brighter in daylight, molten gold ringed by a predator's pupils. For a moment the firelight caught the faint scar running across his jaw, and I thought he might actually smile. Direct, he said simply. Not what I expected from someone in your position. And what is my position exactly? I asked, folding my arms. He gestured toward the seat across from him. Sit. It wasn't a suggestion. I sat, every nerve aware of him, as he lowered himself into the chair opposite me. His gaze was steady, too controlled, like he was weighing truths I didn't know I carried. Your former Alpha Talon Vex told my envoy that you're a half-breed, unable to complete a full shift, dulled senses, diminished strength. The words hit harder than I expected, though I'd heard worse before. That's accurate, I said, flatly. Yet you still carry wolf blood. My mother was full-blooded. My father was human. Kale leaned forward slightly. And your father, I never met him. He was gone before I was born, and your mother dead. My fingers brushed the small pendant at my throat. 11 years now. His gaze followed the motion. That charm, where did you get it? My mother gave it to me, I said quietly. It's all I have left. May I? Something in me screamed, no. Every instinct warned against handing it over, but refusing an Alpha King wasn't an option. Slowly I slipped the lunalite sigil from my neck and placed it in his open hand. He turned it in his fingers, studying the carved wolf that seemed to catch the firelight and hold it. For the first time his expression shifted, faint surprise, a flicker of realization. This is old, he said, voice lower now, and rare. His thumb brushed the engraving. Do you know what this represents? My mother said it was a charm of protection, I replied. Something to keep me safe when she couldn't. It's more than that. He stood, moving to a shelf stacked with weathered tomes. Pulling one free, he set it before me and flipped to a page filled with hand-drawn sigils and curling text. This symbol, he pointed, is tied to the first pack, the wolves who came before all clans, before the bloodlines divided. I stared at the page, frowning. What does that have to do with me? Instead of answering, his gaze found mine. What do you know of your mother's life before Silver Creek? Very little, I admitted. She said she came from people of the old ways, but she never explained what that meant. At that, his expression hardened, with something like certainty. The old ways, he murmured. That explains a great deal. Explains what frustration cracked through my voice. Why am I here? What do you want from me? He closed the book. Walk with me. Not a command shouted, but an order impossible to refuse. I followed him out of the chamber, the rhythm of his boots echoing down the stone corridor. Wolves paused to bow as he passed, their eyes flicking toward me with curiosity or suspicion. Kale's stride was purposeful, precise, and even as I trailed behind him, I couldn't shake the feeling that this walk wasn't about conversation. It was about revelation. Wolves scattered, bowing their heads as Kyle Draven strode past. None dared meet my eyes, though I felt the weight of their curiosity, like invisible claws, scraping across my skin. The mountain air grew thinner as we climbed the narrow path, curling upward toward a high plateau. When we reached it, the world opened wide. The Blackstone stronghold stretched below us, a fortress carved by nature itself. Towering cliffs guarded one side, endless forest blanketed the other. From this height, I finally understood why no one challenged the Blackstone pack. It wasn't just their numbers. It was the land itself, wild, merciless, loyal only to those who ruled it. Silver Creek sold you because they didn't understand what you are, Kale said, suddenly breaking the silence. His voice was calm, but there was iron in it. They saw weakness where they should have seen power. Power. I crossed my arms, feeling the cold bite through my sleeves. What kind of power? He turned to face me, dark hair shifting in the wind. When was the last time you tried to shift? The question struck like a blade. Years ago, I admitted. I was 14. During a pack ceremony. I tried, but the memory burned hot and cruel, the pain twisting through my body, the laughter that followed. They mocked you, Kyle said quietly, eyes hard. They saw failure and called it truth. It wasn't mockery if they were right, I said. I can't shift. I never could. That's because you've been trying to become the wrong wolf. I blinked at him. What? He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from him, the scent of pine and smoke and something older. Close your eyes, he ordered, voice low, magnetic. I hesitated, then obeyed. Feel the mountain beneath you, the wind, the sun. His tone softened, wrapping around me like velvet. Listen to the forest below, the birds, the prey, the heartbeat of life itself. At first there was only silence. Then slowly faint sounds emerged. The flutter of wings, the whisper of leaves, the faint thud of hooves in the distance. Every sense sharpened the world, expanding beyond sight and sound. Your senses aren't broken, Seren, he murmured. They're different, tuned to what most wolves can't feel. His fingers brushed against the lunalight sigil at my throat. Heat flared where he touched me, racing down my spine. The first pack, the true wolves, weren't just stronger, Kyle continued. They were bound to the old magic. Some could heal, some could see beyond time itself. Dreamers, visionaries. Dreaming, I breathed. My eyes flew open. He studied me closely as if my reaction confirmed something. You dream things before they happen. My pulse stuttered. No one knew about that, not since my mother's warning. How do you know that? Because I recognized you, the moment I scented you. His voice was sure, steady. Silver Creek saw a half-blood. I see a Dreamwalker, the firstborn in 3 generations. The word echoed inside me like thunder. Dreamwalker. My mother had whispered it once, long ago, before fear silenced her. What does that even mean? I asked. It means you weren't sent here as an offering, Kyle said, eyes burning into mine. You were sent here because fate chose it. Before I could respond, a long, sharp howl split the air, a call from below, urgent and commanding. Kale's expression shifted instantly, turning to cold steel. We're needed. He was already moving his stride, purposeful. Stay close to me. I followed him down the winding trail. The air around the compound thrummed with tension. Warriors hurried past, some half-shifted eyes glowing claws out. A scout, breathless and trembling, ran to meet us. "My king," he said, bowing deeply. "A delegation from Silver Creek is at the border. They demand the return of their property." Kael's jaw tightened. "Property," he repeated, his voice a soft growl. "Interesting word. They claim the offering was temporary," the scout added nervously. "A gesture of goodwill, not a transfer." Kael's tone went colder still. "And who leads this delegation?" "Roran Creed, son of Talon Vex." The name sliced through me like ice. Roran, the one who had handed me over to Blackstone like I was a burden, not a person. Kael's gaze darkened. "Tell them," he said, voice low and deadly. "I will meet them myself." In the clearing near the boundary line, only 5 wolves from Silver Creek stood waiting. As the messenger vanished into the trees, Kael Draven turned to me. "You're coming with me," he said. Panic tightened my chest. "Why? If they came to take me back, they won't take you anywhere," he interrupted. His tone was absolute calm, yet fierce enough to silence any argument. It should have reassured me, but it only sparked more confusion. Why was he so determined to keep me here? What did a supposed Dreamwalker mean to him or to Blackstone? "Trust me," he said softly. His voice carried a strange warmth that disarmed me completely. And against all logic, I did. I trusted him more than I'd ever trusted Roran Creed or the wolves who had treated me like a burden to sell off. An hour later, I stood beside Kael in a shadowed forest clearing flanked by 4 of his warriors, Braxcon Sylvan and Rin, their presence a wall of silent strength. Across from us, Roran and 4 Silver Creek wolves waited. The air between us trembled with tension, thick as storm clouds before lightning. Kael's tone was deceptively calm. "Unexpected visit. I didn't realize peace offerings came with return policies." Roran's mouth curved in a smirk. "We've reconsidered the arrangement. The female has sentimental value to certain members of our pack." The lie was almost laughable. No one in Silver Creek had ever valued me sentimentally or otherwise. Whatever Roran wanted now, it wasn't me. It was control. "Sentimental value," Kael repeated, each syllable sharp as a blade. Strange claim since she arrived here, in silver chains with burn marks still healing. His hand came to rest at the small of my back, the gesture protective, possessive. "Your emissary also mentioned she was trained for service with notes about how she might be useful." Roran's smirk faltered. His eyes flicked between us, calculation dawning where arrogance had been. "There's been a misunderstanding," he tried. "Seren is a valued member of Silver Creek. We only meant to share her perspective temporarily." Kael's gaze didn't waver. "Unique perspectives," he said, voice dangerously even. "Tell me, Roran Creed, did you know what she is?" Roran frowned. "She's a half-breed, weak, barely able to shift." Kael's smile was cold and merciless. "And that," he said, "is exactly why she stays with Blackstone. Your ignorance forfeited your claim." Roran took a step forward, then froze when the Blackstone warriors drew closer, their eyes glowing faintly in the half-light. "She belongs to Silver Creek," he snapped. By pack law, by pack law." Kael cut in his tone, turning deadly quiet. "She belongs to herself. And by the older laws your kind abandoned, she falls under my protection now." Roran's face flushed red with fury. "You can't just— I already have," Kael said, voice low and final. "Go back to your Alpha. Tell him this Silver Creek's disrespect has been noted. The truce stands for now. But if another of your wolves sets foot on my land uninvited—" He let the silence finish his sentence. I will consider it an act of war." The words hung in the air like thunder that hadn't yet struck. Roran's jaw clenched. Pride and fear waged war in his eyes before he spat at the ground between us. "This isn't over," he growled, then turned vanishing into the forest with the others. Only after they were gone did Kael's rigid stance ease. The storm in his eyes dimmed, replaced by something quieter. He turned to me. "Are you hurt?" he asked softly. I shook my head. "Why did you do that?" I demanded, voice trembling. "Why risk war with them? For me?" He studied me for a long moment, then reached out, brushing a strand of hair from my face. His touch was gentle in a way that felt almost unreal. "Because Seren Vale," he said, voice low enough for only me to hear, "you're not just someone." His hand lingered near my cheek, and his next words came like a vow. "You are everything." We walked back in silence through the shadowed woods. His words echoed inside me, impossible to escape. You are everything. I had spent a lifetime being nothing, half wolf, half human, unwanted. And yet for the first time someone had said I was everything. And I wasn't sure which terrified me more, his power, or the fact that I almost believed him. Dreamwalker. He'd called me that, a name that still felt more like a riddle than a title. 3 days passed, each one peeling away another layer of the Blackstone stronghold, revealing both its discipline and its secrets. I was free to move through certain corridors, the training yards, even the garden terraces, always under the steady watch of guards. For your protection, Nira insisted with that knowing half-smile. Not because we expect you to run. My chambers were in the eastern wing, near those of Kael Draven's closest advisors and warriors. I rarely saw him during those days. He was occupied with council matters and patrols, responding to the unrest stirred by Roran Creed's visit. But even in his absence, I could feel his presence in everything. The respectful nods from wolves who would have otherwise scorned me, the fine meals, the quiet deference that followed me down every hall. On the 4th morning, Nira arrived carrying folded garments of dark silk and embroidered linen, far too elegant for my usual attire. "The Alpha King requests your presence tonight," she said, laying the clothes out on my bed. "The full moon ceremony. Everyone attends." "I'm not part of the pack," I reminded her. Her expression didn't waver. "He named you personally. That means you are expected." The words knotted my stomach. The full moon ceremonies at Silver Creek had always been brutal for me, nights of laughter and pain, where others shifted effortlessly while I writhed, half-formed and broken in front of their eyes. The memory of their jeers burned even now. "I can't shift," I murmured, hating how small my voice sounded. "He knows," Nira said simply. "And he has his reasons." She offered no more. That evening, I joined the procession winding up the mountain. The path led to a massive amphitheater carved into the stone, an ancient place that seemed to pulse with power. Hundreds of torches ringed the space, throwing wild shadows across the faces gathered there. Wolves stood in ranks by bloodline and strength, the elite closest to the fire, the lesser on the fringes. I expected to be led toward the outer rim. Instead, Nira guided me to the inner circle, only 2 rows from the central flames, a place reserved for the Alpha's most trusted. Whispers followed us, curious, distrustful. "Here," she said softly, motioning to an empty space. Then she leaned in. "Whatever happens tonight, remember he has his reasons." Before I could ask what that meant, a deep, thunderous drumming began, a rhythm that seemed to vibrate inside my ribs. From the shadows of a stone archway, Kael Draven appeared. The firelight licked across his bare chest, painted in streaks of black and silver symbols, twisting like living marks. The drumming grew louder as he approached the fire pit, then cut off all at once when he raised his hand. Tonight his voice carried low and resonant. "We honor the moon that binds us, the pulse that lives in our blood." The traditional words. I'd heard them before back at Silver Creek. But then his tone shifted. Tonight we remember truths older than bloodlines, he continued, eyes sweeping the assembly. Strength is not only in claw or muscle. The first wolves were more than warriors. They were healers, seers, dreamers. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Confusion, unease. For too long, Kyle said, his voice rising, we've worshipped only brute power and forgotten the gifts that made us more than beasts. Tonight, under this moon, we remember who we once were. Then he turned and his gaze locked on me. Seren Vale, he said, his tone commanding but calm. Come forward. Every instinct in me screamed, no. To stay hidden. To run. To disappear into the night. But Naira's hand pressed lightly against my back. Go, she whispered. So I did. My legs trembled as I stepped into the circle, the firelight washing over me. The drums slowed to a steady heartbeat. Kyle stood at the center, his hand extended, waiting, and as the crowd watched in silence, I took it. With nowhere else to turn, I placed my hand in his. Kyle Draven's palm was warm, solid grounding as hundreds of wolves watched from every shadowed seat around the fire. Many of you have heard that Silver Creek sent us a half-blood who cannot shift. Kale began, his voice carrying with effortless command. Still holding my hand, he let the silence thicken before continuing. What they did not see, what they were too blind to recognize, was that among them lived a Dreamwalker. The word rippled through the amphitheater like a dropped stone breaking still water. Whispers rose, disbelief twisting through the crowd. Some of the elders leaned forward, their eyes suddenly bright with recognition. For those who have forgotten, Kale continued, his tone low but fierce. Dreamwalkers are those who cross between worlds. They carry sight beyond the veil, warnings, visions, truths that once guided our kind in the first age. I stared at him, bewildered. That wasn't me. I wasn't some mystical seer. I was just a half-breed cursed with nightmares that sometimes came true. Sensing my doubt, Kyle leaned closer, his words barely a breath. Trust me. Then louder for all to hear. Not all strength roars, he declared. Some whispers. The crowd stilled. Then the drums began again, heavy and primal, shaking the air. Kyle released my hand and stepped back, leaving me alone in the glowing circle of firelight. All around me, the pack began to shift muscles, rippling bones, snapping and reshaping with fluid precision. Some wolves transformed slowly, savoring it, others in a single graceful blur. I froze, dread clawing at my chest. Did he want me to try? To fail in front of everyone? But Kyle didn't speak another word. Instead, he began to shift himself. The transformation was seamless, terrifyingly beautiful. His body stretched and changed until standing before me was a massive black wolf with eyes that blazed molten amber. He was enormous, powerful, ancient, the embodiment of dominance and control. He approached me, each step deliberate. Instinctively, I clutched the lunalight sigil at my throat, my mother's last gift. The moment my fingers brushed the pendant, the world changed. The sound of the drums fell away, replaced by a roar like wind rushing through old trees. The fire blurred. The mountainside vanished. I was standing in a forest that felt older than time. Trees towered above me, colossal, their trunks wide enough to hold homes within. Mist curled around their roots, and the moon above glowed silver white through the canopy. Then they appeared, wolves, but not like ours. They were vast, luminous, ancient beings whose eyes held centuries of knowing. At their center stood one larger than the rest, a white wolf with eyes like sunrise over frost. Mother, I whispered without understanding why. The white wolf moved forward, its steps silent as falling snow. When it reached me, it bowed its head and pressed its forehead to mine, and the world exploded. Visions poured through me, wild forests running packs, bloodlines, diverging, the loss of old magic, the rise of alphas who prized muscle over meaning. Then came a darkness. shadows rising ancient enemies, stirring a storm threatening every pack. A war not for territory, but for the soul of our kind. Then as suddenly as it began, it ended. I stumbled back, gasping. The forest vanished, replaced by the amphitheater once more. The crowd was silent, every wolf staring at me with awe or fear. I followed their gaze downward and froze. My skin glowed soft blue light, pulsing beneath it. The pendant burned against my chest, radiating that same celestial hue. Kael was human again, standing beside me, his expression triumphant and inexplicably tender. "You see," he said to the stunned assembly, "the old blood stirs again. The Dreamwalker walks." The glow faded slowly, leaving me trembling, dazed. What? What just happened?" I whispered. Kael's hand came to rest at the small of my back. "Your first true walking," he said quietly, "and the proof of what I've known since the moment you stepped into my halls." Before I could respond, an elderly woman stepped from the crowd, silver hair braided down her back, her presence commanding enough that even Kael inclined his head. "It's true then," she said, her eyes fixed on me. "After all these years." The circle closes. Kael nodded. As the prophecy spoke. Prophecy. I echoed, my voice barely audible. The elder smiled, her fingers brushing the pendant that still shimmered faintly. "When the lost daughter returns, bearing the mark of the first pack. When the Dreamwalker stands between worlds. When the Alpha King finds his true mate, the time of awakening begins." Her words struck like thunder. True mate. I looked to Kael. His expression softened, and in that look I saw something raw, hope, vulnerability, and something deeper that made my heart stumble. "That's why Silver Creek couldn't take you back," he said softly. "Not just because you're a Dreamwalker." His voice lowered, reverent. "But because you're mine. From the moment you crossed into my land," Kael Draven said quietly, "I knew what they never could." His hand brushed my cheek with impossible gentleness. "You are my fated mate, Seren." The words hung in the air like lightning before a storm. My fated mate. The rarest bond in all werewolf lore, a connection older than time, deeper than blood. A tie written not in choice, but in destiny. I should have been terrified, but instead something inside me, something ancient, answered his words like an echo, long waiting to be heard. "Is that why Roran Creed wanted me back?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. "Did he know?" Kael's expression darkened. "No. Silver Creek abandoned belief in fated bonds generations ago. They trade loyalty for power now. Roran wanted you back because I wanted you. Pride and politics, nothing more." When the ceremony ended, Kael led me back through the flickering torches. His hand never left mine, even under the weight of hundreds of stares, some filled with wonder, others with jealousy or barely masked hostility. In minutes, I had gone from unwanted half-breed to the most envied woman in Blackstone. Later, Kael walked me to my quarters himself. The night was heavy with silence and tension, the air between us electric and uncertain. At my door, he stopped. "Tomorrow there will be questions," he warned. "Challenges, maybe. The pack will need time to accept what this means." "And what does it mean?" I asked. "Beyond old prophecies and legends," he looked at me, then really looked, and his voice softened in a way that made my heart ache. "It means you'll never stand alone again, Seren. It means you found your place, if you choose to keep it." "Do I have a choice?" I asked, not accusing, just seeking the truth. "Always." His tone was steady, firm. "A fated bond is a path, not a cage. I would never force you to walk it." He lifted my hand and pressed his lips to my knuckles, a gesture so gentle, so utterly human, that it stole my breath. Then he turned and disappeared into the dark hall. I barely slept. My mind churned with fragments of prophecy, the glow of the moonfire still burning in my chest. By morning, Nera arrived with breakfast and gossip practically humming beneath her calm tone. "The Alpha King requests you in the training grounds," she said, setting the tray down. Her eyes sparkled despite her effort to look composed. "Everyone saw what happened last night." I sighed, tearing a piece of bread. "You can stop pretending you're not dying to ask." Naira laughed softly. "The Alpha King's fated mate, a Dreamwalker reborn in Blackstone. They'll be telling that story for centuries." "If it's true," I muttered, still unsure whether to believe any of it. "It is true," she insisted. "That light around you, that was ancient magic. No one can fake that." She hesitated. "Though, not everyone is happy about it." "Of course not," I said quietly. A half-blood outsider suddenly standing beside their alpha, I'd be shocked if there wasn't resentment. The training grounds were alive with motion and noise, wolves, sparring claws, clashing bodies, hitting dirt. The air reeked of sweat and wildness. At the center stood Kale, shirtless, gleaming with sweat, demonstrating a combat sequence to younger wolves. Every movement was precise, a balance of brute strength and restrained control. He spotted me instantly and said a word to his second, stepping away from the circle. As he approached, the training ground went quiet, every gaze snapping toward us. "Walk with me," he said. Not a command this time, but an invitation. We moved to the edge of the clearing where a narrow stream murmured through moss-covered rocks. "You're pushing them harder than usual," I noted, watching the intensity of the training behind us. Kale's expression hardened. "Roaring Creed's visit wasn't diplomacy," he said. His voice was low, dangerous. It was a warning. "Silver Creek is pushing boundaries," Kale Draven said, his tone edged with restrained fury. "They're testing for weaknesses." My stomach nodded. "Because of me." He turned fully toward me, the mountain wind stirring his dark hair. "No. This started long before you arrived. Your presence might have accelerated things. But you didn't cause it." He raked a hand through his hair, a rare show of unease. "There's something else you should know. Something I saw in your vision that night." My breath caught. "You saw it too," he nodded slowly. "Not all of it, not as you did, but enough. The shadows gathering, the ancient threat. It aligns with what my scouts have reported." His voice hardened. "Silver Creek isn't acting alone. They've forged an alliance, 3 eastern packs. The Bloodhowl, Iron Moon, and Frostfang clans." "An alliance against Blackstone?" I asked, frowning. "Why, your pack is the strongest in the Western Territories." "Exactly," he said grimly. "They fear what they can't control. And now with a Dreamwalker among us." His gaze flicked toward me, the implication clear. My presence had painted a target on his pack. "What happens now?" I asked quietly. Now he said, his expression softening. "You learn what you were meant to be, both Dreamwalker and mate to an Alpha King." The next week changed everything. Every morning I met with Sable, the elder healer, the same silver-haired wolf who'd recognized the prophecy during the ceremony. Her cabin smelled of pine sage and smoke, shelves lined with jars of herbs and ancient scrolls. She became my teacher, guiding me through the truths my mother had died before she could share. "Dreamwalkers don't just see the future," Sable explained one misty morning as she stirred tea that shimmered faintly green. "They walk it. They move between worlds, the seen and the unseen, the now and the possible. They can reach the minds of those they're bound to, and sense danger long before it takes form." "Is that why I could never shift properly?" I asked. Sable nodded. "Most wolves channel their power into the body. You channel it into the spirit. Shifting was never your purpose, child. You were meant to walk the dream paths." Afternoons belonged to Kael. He taught me the laws of pack hierarchy, the delicate politics that governed alliances and kept old grudges from reigniting. I learned about oaths carved in blood, about the fragile peace that had held the region together for generations. Sometimes our hands brushed over the maps, a fleeting touch that sent lightning down my skin. At night the dreams returned stronger. I saw through the eyes of others, Brax training under moonlight, Naira tending the wounded, the restless unease spreading through the pack. I felt their fears, their loyalty, their whispers. And through all of it, one connection burned brightest, the golden tether that linked me to Kael. He never spoke of it, neither did I, but it pulsed between us like a heartbeat. 2 weeks after the full moon, the first open challenge came. I was leaving Sable's hut when 3 she-wolves stepped into my path, purebloods, proud and sharp-eyed, their movements fluid with dominance. "Half-blood," the leader sneered, circling me. "You may have dazzled the Alpha with your little light trick, but we see you for what you are." I kept my stance steady, recalling Kael's advice, never show fear to a dominant wolf. They only respect strength. "And what exactly am I asked evenly. "An opportunist," she spat. "A Silver Creek spy or a clever liar who clawed her way into power." One of her companions hissed softly, "Careful, Vion. If the king hears you." The king, Vion snapped, is blinded by superstition and a pretty face. Someone needs to protect Blackstone from his mistakes. Rage coiled inside me, not for myself, but for him. These wolves questioned their Alpha's judgment, his strength, his right to lead. "If you have concerns about your Alpha," I said coldly, "you should challenge him openly, not ambush his guest in the courtyard." Vion's lips curled back, baring her fangs. "You talk like you belong here." "I talk about respect," I shot back, "something you seem to have forgotten." Her eyes flashed amber. "Maybe you need a reminder of your place." She lunged, but I didn't flinch. My hand went instinctively to the lunalite sigil at my throat, not out of fear, but resolve. The world slowed. The air shimmered. I felt that same ancient current surge through me, not in light this time, but in fire. My vision burned blue-white. Vion froze mid-motion, her snarl dying on her lips. Her body trembled as if pinned by unseen force. "Your place," I said softly, my voice layered with something otherworldly, "is not to question what you don't understand." And for a heartbeat, it wasn't just my voice that spoke, but 1,000 echoes of the old blood whispering through me. "The storm," I murmured, my glowing gaze fixed on her, "comes for all wolves, Vion. The pack can't stand divided." Kael Draven said, his voice low as the air between us vibrated with power. Images struck me like lightning, not only my vision, but Vion's too. Her childhood among the Blackstone wolves. Her father's death defending this territory. Her loyalty genuine yet poisoned by fear of the unknown. When the connection broke, I stumbled backward, gasping as reality rushed back. Vion stared at me, her face pale. You were inside my head," she whispered. "Not on purpose," I said, breathlessly. "I'm still learning to control it." Something flickered behind her eyes, not forgiveness, but a grudging acknowledgement. Without another word, she turned and stalked away, her companions trailing after her. I hadn't realized Kael was there until his presence brushed mine, quiet, steady, powerful. His expression unreadable. "That was new," he murmured. I nodded, still shaken. Sable said Dreamwalkers could touch minds, but I didn't think I'd see her memories. He guided me toward a nearby stone bench, his hand resting lightly on my back. "Your power's awakening faster than we expected. The bond between us is feeding it." The bond. We never spoke of it directly, though. It hung between us like a live wire every time our eyes met. "Is it true," I asked quietly, "what she said, that some think you're blinded by this?" His jaw flexed. "There will always be wolves who resist what they fear. Those who hide their weakness behind tradition." "Like me," I said, softly. He turned my hand over in his thumb, tracing slow, maddening circles against my palm. "Are you afraid, Seren?" I met his eyes, storm-dark and fierce. "Not of you," I admitted, "but of all this. Of what it means. Of what I'm supposed to be." "You've spent your life being overlooked," he said. invisible. Now you're at the center of something the old world can't explain. Prophecies, politics, war. He paused, voice lowering. And me. Don't leave that part out. The raw honesty in his tone stopped my breath. For a fleeting moment, the fearsome Alpha King was gone, replaced by the man beneath the title, one who looked at me as if I were both his hope and his undoing. The moment shattered when a horn sounded from the main gate, a deep, urgent warning. Kael was on his feet instantly, his posture shifting from tender to predatory in a heartbeat. Around us, warriors were already sprinting toward the noise, some half-shifted claws gleaming. "Stay here," he ordered. But I was already following. "If there's danger, I should know. What if I can help?" He hesitated, then nodded sharply. "Stay behind me." We moved fast, the air thick with the scent of blood and smoke. A crowd had gathered near the main gate, the warriors parting as Kael advanced. In the center stood a young wolf, barely conscious. His clothes were shredded, skin torn open, long silver-laced wounds that refused to heal. "Silver," someone murmured. "The cuts won't close." Kael's presence silenced the chaos instantly. "Report," he commanded. The scout, barely more than a boy, struggled to stay upright. "Ambush. North Patrol. We were checking the border. They came out of nowhere. 30, maybe more. Silver Creek markings and others." My stomach clenched. They had silver-tipped arrows. The young wolf continued, his voice breaking. "Silver blades." The rest of the patrol, Kael's expression told me he already knew. Dead. Or taken. The scout gasped. "They let me go. Said to deliver a message." He coughed, blood staining his lips. "They said, 'Return what was sold, or the next attack hits the heart of Blackstone.'" The crowd fell utterly silent. Every gaze turned toward me. "Return what was sold." The words burned through the cold night like a curse. Kael's face turned to stone fury, controlled but dangerous. "Get him to Seren," he said, voice sharp as a blade. Two warriors rushed forward to carry the injured scout away. Then Kael's gaze shifted toward the fortress. "Summon the council. Orek Dain Marek Eldrick. Now. To the war room. Now." The command in Kel Draven's voice was absolute. As the crowd broke apart, scattering under the weight of urgency, he turned to me, his gaze sharp, unreadable. "This changes everything," he said quietly. "They're attacking because of me," I whispered the words, tasting like guilt and iron. The image of the wounded scout haunted me. People are dying because his hand caught my arm, strong but not harsh. "No, don't carry that." His eyes burned into mine. "They're using you as an excuse, Seren. This was always their design, to weaken Blackstone, to test us. You didn't start this war." I wanted to believe him. But the message still echoed in my head. "Return what was sold." My presence here had blood in its wake. "I should be there," I said quietly. "At the council meeting. This involves me, whether they like it or not." He hesitated, studying me, then nodded once. "You're right. It's time the council understands what's truly at stake and what we're protecting." The war room was carved deep into the mountain, an ancient space lit by flickering torches that painted shifting shadows across the stone. A massive round table dominated the center, its surface scarred by centuries of councils past. Maps lined the walls, territories marked in charcoal and red ink symbols denoting alliances, betrayals, and blood debts. 10 council members were already seated when we entered their presence, heavy with authority. Each of them carried the scent of age and dominance, power that came from years, not just strength. Their expressions varied as I stepped inside, some polite, others openly distrustful. Only Sable, seated near the far end, offered a faint nod of encouragement. Kael wasted no time. "Silver Creek's actions have escalated beyond diplomacy," he began, his tone clipped, commanding. "Our patrol was ambushed. They sent a message, 'Return what was sold.' This isn't a border skirmish anymore. It's a declaration tied to prophecy to power." Respectfully, my king said, Thane, an older wolf with scars across his arms, are we certain this connection to the half-breed is worth war? Perhaps a negotiation could spare us bloodshed. Kale's eyes snapped toward him, a low growl thrumming in his chest. Her name is Seren Vale, he said, voice soft and lethal. She's not a bargaining chip. She is a Dreamwalker and my fated mate. There will be no negotiations. The words settled over the room like thunder. Thane bowed his head, but didn't look convinced. What Thane Mean said, Diane, a woman with silver streaks through her black hair, is that we must explore every path. If Silver Creek and their allies truly prepare for war, they are. I cut in before I could stop myself. Every eye turned toward me. My pulse hammered, but I met their stares head on. It's not only Silver Creek. I've seen it in my dreams in the Bond. Sable leaned forward. You've seen this? I nodded, fingers brushing the lunalite sigil at my throat. At first it was fragments, shadows, whispers. But since the moon ceremony, the visions have sharpened. 4 packs, the Blood Howl, Iron Moon, Shadowcrest, and Frostfang, all uniting in the northern forests. They fear what's coming. They fear the prophecy. And what does this prophecy claim? Thane asked, his skepticism barely concealed. Change, Kale said simply. The return of balanced leadership, shaped by more than brute force. Power guided by wisdom, not just bloodline. He stepped closer to me, his presence a wall of heat and quiet strength. For too long, our kind has worshipped dominance, who fights hardest kills fastest. But the first pack ruled differently. They valued the gifts we've forgotten, those that came from the spirit, not the claw. Dreaming, healing. Sensing the unseen, Sable added, her weathered voice carrying across the chamber. The prophecy speaks of their return and of the storm they will awaken. It terrifies alphas who only know how to rule through fear. The council exchanged uneasy glances. Some nodded slowly. Others folded their arms, weighing their pride against the truth before them. Finally, Orek, the youngest among them, spoke. What do you propose, my king? We can't just sit behind our walls and wait for war to find us. Kale's gaze hardened. We won't, he said. Blackstone doesn't wait for the storm, we meet it head on. We prepare, Kale. Draven said, his voice echoing off the stone walls of the war room. We fortify our borders, strengthen our defenses. His gaze shifted toward me, a spark of resolve in his eyes. And we awaken what they fear most, the old blood, the prophecy, the bond. Sable's voice broke through the tense silence. If the mate bond is completed, it will amplify both your powers. The Dreamwalker's vision, the Alpha's link to the ancient magics, it will make you unstoppable together. My pulse quickened. The mate bond. It wasn't just a title or a promise. It was an eternal seal, a merging of soul and blood. It meant ceremony, the exchange of marks, and the most intimate union imaginable. Heat rose in my cheeks before I could stop it. Is that what you want? Kyle asked suddenly, turning from his counsel to face me directly. His voice was low but steady. The choice is yours, Seren. It must be freely given. The council chamber fell utterly still. For a heartbeat, all I could hear was the rhythmic pounding of my heart. Despite the fear, despite the prophecy and the war looming over us, my soul had already decided. From the first moment his golden eyes found mine in that great hall, something inside me had changed forever. Yes, I said, my voice clear. I choose this. I choose you. Relief flickered across his face, chased quickly by something deeper, something raw and reverent. He turned back to the council. Prepare the ritual for tomorrow night. Double the border patrols. Bring the outlying families into the compound. We stand ready for whatever comes. As the council members rose and dispersed, the weight of what we just set in motion filled the air like an approaching storm. Kyle walked beside me through the compound's winding paths, his hand resting protectively at the small of my back. Warriors passed us in tense silence, eyes sharp movements, brisk. The scent of fear, and iron hung heavy in the wind. When we reached my quarters, he stopped. "Are you certain about this?" he asked quietly. "Once the mate bond is sealed, it can't be undone. Not by time, not even by death." I searched his face, the strong lines, the restrained power, and the flicker of tenderness he never showed anyone else. I've never been more certain of anything I said truthfully. "But what about you? You're an Alpha King. You could have chosen any pureblood, someone who'd bring Alliance's power." He cut me off gently, his fingers brushing my cheek. "I chose nothing. Fate did." His expression softened, the fire in his eyes turning to something almost human. "But if I'd been given the chance to choose freely, I would still have chosen you. The half-blood who faced down a king with nothing but defiance in her eyes. And no idea how extraordinary she was." His words left me breathless. That night, the dreams returned. The white wolf, Anara, waited for me in the ancient forest again, mist swirling through towering pines. But she wasn't alone this time. Others gathered around her, the wolves of the first pack, radiant and fierce, their eyes glowing like embers in the dark. "The circle closes," Anara spoke, her voice like wind and flame in my mind. "What was broken begins to mend." "They're coming for us," I said. 4 packs, Bloodhowl, Iron Moon, Shadowcrest, Frostfang, all against Blackstone. "Yes," came the reply. "The old ways never return quietly. Change terrifies those who cling to control." "I don't know if I'm strong enough," I admitted, my voice trembling. "I'm still learning what I am." The white wolf's eyes held both fire and mercy. "You are enough, daughter. You always were. The bond will awaken. What sleeps within, but the power was yours long before destiny called your name." I woke as dawn brushed gold across the mountains. My hand went to the lunalite sigil, now warm against my skin, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. The air felt alive, charged with invisible energy. Even the sunlight seemed sharper, more vivid. Moments later, Naira entered with breakfast, her face pale. "Scouts have returned," she said grimly. "Movement in the northern forests. Dozens of wolves traveling under cover of night." My breath caught. "How long do we have? 2 days?" "Maybe 3, Naira said quietly as she laid out a gown. Unlike anything I'd ever worn, a deep storm blue fabric that shimmered faintly under the candlelight. "The mating ceremony is set for sunset," she added. "The entire pack will witness." The rest of the day passed in a blur of preparation and tension. Blackstone had become a fortress on edge, warriors drilling harder than ever, families reinforcing walls and gathering supplies, healers grinding herbs for wounds made by silver. Yet beneath the pulse of fear ran something electric excitement. Their Alpha King was about to bind his soul to his fated mate. When the sun dipped low and the mountains caught fire with gold, Sable came to me. She wove slender white blossoms through my hair and painted ancient sigils along my wrists and collarbone, her mixture smelling of pine sap and rain-soaked earth. "These markings will guide the flow of power," she murmured. "A bond between an Alpha King and a Dreamwalker hasn't been forged in 7 generations. What you unleash together will shake the old blood." "Will it hurt?" I asked, watching her steady hands. "Not in the way you mean," she said with a small smile. "It will be overwhelming, a rewriting of who you are." The ceremony took place in the same stone amphitheater where the moon ritual had been held. Torches lined the steps, throwing warm light over hundreds of faces. Warriors, elders, children, all silent beneath a sky heavy with stars. The central fire blazed higher than ever, its flames reflecting off the carved walls like living spirits. At the center stood Kael Draven, dressed in ceremonial black and silver. Power radiated from him in quiet waves. When his gaze met mine across the gathering, the world narrowed to just that connection, the gold of his eyes, the pull of something older than either of us. Sable led me toward him. With each step, energy built under my skin, humming like a storm about to break. The lunalite sigil at my throat grew hot, pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat. When I reached him, Kale took my hands. The touch sent a surge through me, lightning and warmth all at once. The pack began to chant in a language that seemed both alien and familiar, the cadence vibrating in my chest. Under moon and star, Kael's voice rang clear, before the eyes of ancestors and pack. I claim this wolf as mine, bound by fate, sealed by choice, united in purpose and heart. My reply rose instinctively, the words flowing as if remembered from another life. Under moon and star, before the eyes of ancestors and pack, I claim this wolf as mine, bound by fate, sealed by choice, united in purpose and heart. Sable stepped forward, holding the blood song edge. With ritual precision, she drew shallow cuts across our palms and pressed our hands together. Blood to blood, she intoned. Heart to heart, soul to soul. What fate has joined, let no power divide. When our blood mingled, the air itself ignited. The fire surged skyward, and a brilliant blue light burst around us, stronger, purer than before. Kyle's eyes flared gold, his pupils narrowing to that of the wolf. And then I felt him. Not beside me, but within me. His thoughts, his heartbeat, his memories unfurling like pages in a book I'd always meant to read. I saw his childhood, his rise to the throne, the loneliness that came with command. And he saw me, my scars, my endurance, the stubborn spark that refused to die. His voice filled my mind, wordless yet clear. Mine to protect. Mine to cherish. Mine to stand beside, not behind. I answered without hesitation. Yours as you are, mine equal in strength, bound in all things. The blue light condensed, wrapping around our joined hands before sinking into our skin. When it faded, matching sigils remained on our wrists, patterns mirroring those on my pendant. The bond is sealed, Sable proclaimed, the prophecy fulfilled. The Alpha King and the Dreamwalker stand as one. A roar of howls erupted, echoing against the mountain peaks, a chorus of triumph that shook the earth. But beneath the celebration, a new sound reached my heightened senses, the rustle of bodies moving through the northern forest, the metallic whisper of drawn weapons. Kyle's head snapped toward the sound. Through our bond, I felt his shift from reverence to readiness. They come sooner than expected, his voice brushed my mind. Then we face them together, I replied, gripping his hand. The pack surged into motion, torches flaring like battle stars. I felt no fear, only certainty. Whatever waited beyond the trees, war blood or peace, we would meet it united. Once I had been sold like property to a rival pack. Now I stood as Seren Vale, Dreamwalker of Blackstone, chosen by fate and crowned by fire. The storm was coming, and for the first time in my life I belonged.